I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but life can be a real kick in the gut sometimes. I'm Jake, a 35-year-old husband and father to a 6-year-old boy named Ben. My wife, Sarah, is a fiery redhead with a quick tongue and an even quicker temper. We met in college and I fell for her hard. She was funny, smart, and had this undeniable charisma that drew people in. We were madly in love, and after a few years of dating, we tied the knot. Fast forward to now, and I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. The first signs of trouble were subtle enough to be dismissed. Sarah began spending more time on her phone, giggling at texts and snapping pictures of her meals, just like everyone else. I brushed it off as her being busy with work and social media. She ran her own event planning business and had a solid group of friends. But there was something about those late nights and the way she'd get defensive when I asked who she was texting that started to gnaw at me. Then there was the nanny, Lisa. Young, bubbly, and always seemingly happy to be around. She started working for us about a year ago, and at first I thought she was a godsend. Ben adored her and she was great with him. But then I noticed how Sarah's demeanor changed around Lisa. There was an energy in the air that I couldn't quite put my finger on, a comfort that felt too close for my liking. Every time I walked into the room, it felt like they were sharing some kind of secret. I tried to talk to Sarah about it, but she brushed me off, saying I was being paranoid. The turning point came one ordinary Saturday. I was supposed to take Ben to his soccer practice, but my plans fell through when I got a last-minute work call. I decided to head home early to surprise them. As I pulled into the driveway, I caught sight of their car parked out front. My heart raced as I walked up to the door, feeling a strange knot in my stomach. I opened the door and my world shattered. There they were in our living room, laughing and sharing a bottle of wine. Lisa was sitting on the edge of the couch and Sarah was leaning in close, whispering something that made them both burst into laughter. It was that laugh, the one that used to be reserved just for me. I felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief. I stood frozen in the doorway for a moment, feeling like an intruder in my own life. Then without thinking, I cleared my throat loudly. They both jumped, and Sarah's face turned pale. The laughter evaporated, replaced by an awkward silence that felt thicker than the walls of our home. "What's going on here?" I managed to spit out, my voice shaking with emotion. Suddenly, everything came crashing down. Sarah's initial surprise morphed into a look of defiance. "Jake, it's not what it looks like," she pleaded, trying to regain her composure, but I could see the panic in her eyes. I wasn't buying it. I demanded an explanation, and what followed was an avalanche of lies that left me reeling. She claimed they were just friends, that they were planning a surprise party for me, and that I was being overly jealous and paranoid. I felt rage bubble up inside me. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her realize the enormity of this betrayal, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I felt a hollow emptiness settle in my chest. "Save it, Sarah." I saw enough to know the truth. I responded, my voice barely above a whisper. The confrontation escalated to a point where Lisa awkwardly excused herself, leaving us alone to face the dark truth. Sarah's excuses became desperate, and it was as if she was trying to convince herself just as much as she was trying to convince me. I remember feeling like I was watching a reality show unfold, one where I was the unwilling star. The person I loved, the mother of my child, was lying right in front of me, and I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. The emotional impact of that moment was profound. I went from shock to anger, and then to a deep sadness I never expected. I couldn't believe I was standing there, feeling utterly betrayed. I had given her my heart, and she had thrown it away like an old shoe. I needed time to process everything, to make sense of what had just happened. I walked out, leaving her standing there, still trying to spin her web of lies. I felt as if I was in a movie, where the protagonist discovers a twist in their story, but this was my reality. I called my best friend, Mike, who had known Sarah since we started dating. He was shocked, furious, and ready to help me figure out what to do next. As I sat on my porch, replaying the events in my mind, I realized I had a decision to make. I could either try to salvage what was left of our marriage or take the hard road toward healing and move on. But with the memory of her laughter with Lisa ringing in my ears, I knew I had to take control of my life again. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long and painful journey, one that would lead to unexpected decisions and consequences I never saw coming. I spent the rest of the weekend in a fog. I barely ate, hardly slept, and felt like a ghost in my own home. Each time I walked past a room where I could still hear remnants of Sarah's laughter echoing in my head, my stomach twisted. I tried to focus on Ben, who was blissfully unaware of the chaos that had just erupted in our lives. My heart ached for him more than for myself. I didn't want him to feel the impact of his mother's betrayal, but I knew the truth would eventually surface. Monday morning came and I still hadn't talked to Sarah. I had avoided her like the plague, retreating to my office to work through the shock. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I finally decided to confront her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I needed a strategy, a plan. That evening I gathered my thoughts and set the stage for a serious conversation. I needed to understand the full extent of what had happened and how deep this affair really ran. I confronted her when Ben was asleep and the house was quiet. I found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "Sarah, we need to talk." "No more lies," I said, my voice steady though my heart raced. "Jake, come on. Can't we just move on from the weekend?" "It was a misunderstanding," she replied, trying to wave it off with a casual flick of her hand. "Misunderstanding? I saw you two together and I heard you laughing. How can you say it was a misunderstanding?" My frustration flared as I pushed her to be honest. Was it just a one-time thing, or is there more to it? She hesitated, looking at me with a mixture of annoyance and guilt. "Fine. We've kissed a couple of times, but it was nothing serious. It was just fun, a way to blow off steam." "You've been so busy with work and I felt neglected," she admitted, but her tone suggested she was still trying to downplay the situation. My anger ignited. "Fun? You call cheating on your husband fun?" I could feel the betrayal seeping into every part of my body, and I had never been so angry in my life. "You turned to our nanny for comfort instead of coming to me, instead of talking about what you felt." Suddenly, it all came gushing out. The more I pressed, the more she tried to defend her actions. She brought up how I had been distant lately, consumed by work and responsibilities, and how she felt like she was living in a marriage where she was alone. Every excuse dug deeper into my heart, as if she was trying to justify her infidelity rather than accept the hurt she had caused. "Look, Jake, I messed up, okay? Lisa and I just connected on a level that, I don't know, I felt alive again. It was stupid and impulsive and I hate myself for it. But I love you," she pleaded, tears pooling in her eyes. I stood there, unable to comprehend her words. "You think I can just forget this? You think love is enough to clean up this mess? You broke my trust, Sarah. I don't know if I can ever believe you again." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I had never thought I'd be here, fighting for the very foundation of our relationship. I had always imagined we'd work through life's challenges together, not be torn apart by deceit. As the days wore on, I felt my emotions shift. Yes, I was still angry, but I also felt an overwhelming sense of loss. I was losing the dream of a perfect family, the ideal life we had built together. Those moments of laughter, the family trips and bedtime stories were all tainted now. I couldn't help but wonder if Sarah's betrayal had been brewing for a while, and if I had been too blind to see it. My mind raced as I weighed my options. I could try to forgive her and work on our marriage, but could I ever truly trust her again? Or should I take a harder stance? I knew I had to protect Ben and ensure he had a stable home, but I was also fighting for my dignity and self-respect. That's when I reached out to a family lawyer, just to understand my rights and options. The idea of a divorce was both terrifying and strangely liberating. I needed to know that I wouldn't be left empty-handed if I chose the path of separation. I had heard too many horror stories of people losing everything in the wake of infidelity. The more I talked to the lawyer, the more I felt like I was preparing for battle. I didn't want to be vindictive, but I knew I had to be strategic. I wanted sole custody of Ben. I needed to ensure he would be safe from the fallout of our fractured marriage. I'd heard of parents who used their children as pawns, and I was determined not to be one of those people. I wanted to approach this with integrity, not spite. When I got home, I found Sarah sitting alone in the dark, tears streaming down her face. It was a moment that struck me, seeing her broken. Part of me felt pity. But I quickly reminded myself that I couldn't let emotions cloud my judgment any longer. I had to be strong for Ben. "Jake, I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try," she said, her voice shaky. I took a deep breath, realizing that our lives were about to change forever. "You may want to try, Sarah, but I need to think about what's best for Ben and me right now. I need space to figure all of this out." As I walked away, I felt a sense of purpose begin to form. I was no longer just the hurt husband. Now, I was a man making decisions to secure a better future for my son. I knew the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but I had to navigate it carefully for Ben's sake. I was ready to fight for my family, even if it meant redefining what family would look like. The days turned into weeks, and the reality of our situation began to sink in like a lead weight on my chest. I found myself wrestling with my emotions daily, oscillating between rage, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Sarah, for her part, seemed to oscillate too. One moment, she was pleading for forgiveness, and the next, she'd launch into a defensive tirade, insisting that I was overreacting. It was exhausting. I remember one particular evening when she attempted an impromptu family dinner, hoping to recreate some semblance of normalcy. She made Ben's favorite pasta dish and set the table with care. As we sat there, the three of us, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were a family pretending for the sake of appearances. Ben chatted away, blissfully unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. I tried to smile, to engage, but every laugh from him felt like a stab to my heart. When the meal was over and Ben was occupied with his toys, Sarah turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Can we talk, just us?" I hesitated but nodded. We moved to the living room and I braced myself for another round of her attempts to manipulate my feelings. "Jake, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I know I messed up. I've been seeing a therapist to help me understand why I did what I did," she began, her voice trembling. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And what have you learned?" She took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've realized that I was feeling neglected, like I wasn't a priority for you anymore. I thought the excitement with Lisa would fill that void. I know that's not an excuse, but I want to do better. I love you and I want to try to fix this. Can we go to couples therapy? I think it might help us." As I listened, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope of recovery, but another part felt a deep-seated skepticism. "Sarah, you can't just sweep this under the rug. You chose to cheat on me. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." "I know, but I want to work on it. I want to do better for you, for Ben, for us," she insisted, her voice rising with desperation. I could feel the conflict brewing within me. I loved Sarah, or at least the person I thought she was before all of this, but love wasn't enough to heal the wounds she had inflicted. I made the decision to take my time before responding. I needed to hear what my instincts were telling me and to allow myself to feel everything fully without rushing into a choice that could alter our lives forever. As the nights rolled on, I started to put together a plan of my own. I reached out to a few friends who had been through similar situations for advice. I wanted to know how they had navigated the treacherous waters of betrayal and healing. Their stories, filled with heartbreak and resilience, gave me strength. I began to realize that I had a choice. I could either become a victim of this situation or take charge of my own life. I spent a lot of time considering what my ideal outcome would be. I thought about my future and what kind of environment I wanted for Ben. I realized that staying in a toxic marriage where trust was shattered could lead to more harm than good, not just for me, but for our son. I envisioned a life where I could be a better father, free from the weight of betrayal. With that clarity in mind, I made an appointment to meet with my lawyer again. I needed to know what my options were, especially when it came to custody. I asked about the steps I could take to secure a strong case for sole custody. I was adamant that I wanted Ben to be in a healthy, supportive environment, free from the chaos that had become our home. The meeting was enlightening. I learned about the importance of documenting everything: communication with Sarah, her behavior, and how it affected Ben. My lawyer advised me to keep a journal detailing our interactions and any concerning behavior from Sarah. It felt like I was gearing up for a battle, and to some extent I was. I was fighting for my family's future. That night I returned home feeling resolute. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. I knew that soon I would have to confront Sarah again, this time with the intention of setting clear boundaries and communicating my needs. The following day, I took a deep breath and approached her. "Sarah, we need to have another talk. This time it's about what I want moving forward." "Sure," she replied, her voice tinged with hesitation. "What's on your mind?" "First, let's be clear. I'm not ready to forgive or forget what happened. I can't, but I'm willing to listen to what you have to say." I watched her face fall slightly. "I'm also going to start documenting everything. I'm serious about wanting sole custody of Ben." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see panic flash across her face. "You can't be serious, Jake. You really think I'd do anything to hurt him?" "No, but I need to protect him from the fallout of this marriage. I'm not saying I want to keep you from him, but you need to understand that I'm not going to let this go unanswered. I need to know that he'll be safe." She opened her mouth to respond, but the words faltered. Instead, she looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted it to come to this. I thought we could work things out." "I want that too, but it has to be on my terms now. Trust is gone, and I need to figure out what that looks like moving forward." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of unresolved emotions. I didn't expect her to immediately understand, but I needed her to realize that I was serious about protecting our son. The line had been drawn, and there was no going back. As I walked away, the feeling of empowerment surged through me. I was taking control of my life, my future, and my son's future. The road ahead would be tough, and I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. I was ready to fight for what mattered most, Ben, and the life I wanted for both of us. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotions and newfound determination. I was navigating uncharted waters, trying to balance my role as a father and the somber reality of my crumbling marriage. I kept up with my journaling, documenting every conversation with Sarah and noting any concerning behavior. It felt almost clinical, but it was necessary. I wanted to ensure that I was prepared for whatever lay ahead, especially when it came to custody issues. Sarah tried to reach out to me, pleading for a chance to work on our marriage, but I maintained my distance. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still trying to manipulate the situation in her favor. We would have civil conversations about Ben, but when it came to discussing our relationship, I kept it clear that I needed space. I was no longer the husband who would simply accept apologies and move on. I felt stronger now, and I was ready to stand my ground. One evening I came home from work and found Sarah waiting for me. She had tears in her eyes and looked anxious. "Can we talk, please?" she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for another round of emotional pleas. "What is it, Sarah?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking and I know I messed up. I want to make things right. I'll do anything you ask," she said, desperation seeping into her tone. I shook my head, feeling frustration rise within me. "You say that now, but how do I know you won't just slip back into old habits? You need to understand that trust is earned, not given. You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal." "I understand, Jake, I really do. I'm willing to go to therapy to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I've made a terrible mistake and I need you to give me a chance to prove myself," she insisted. At that moment I felt the weight of her words, but I also felt the need to protect myself. "Sarah, I can't make that promise. This is going to take time. I'm focused on Ben right now. He's my priority." Her face fell and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "I get it, but please don't shut me out." "Completely. I'm still here and I want to be a good mother to him." "I know you do," I replied, softening slightly. "But being a good mother means being honest and working on yourself. If that's what you truly want, then start with that." With that, I turned to walk away, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her cheeks. My heart ached for what we once had, but I also felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer willing to be the doormat in our relationship. As the weeks continued, I threw myself into parenting. I took Ben to soccer practice, helped him with his homework, and made time for family outings. I tried my best to shield him from the turmoil at home. I wanted him to feel secure and loved, even if our family dynamic had changed. But then, just when I thought I had a handle on things, I received a call from my lawyer. "Jake, we need to discuss some developments regarding your custody case," she said, her tone serious. "Developments? What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "There have been some instances reported regarding Sarah's behavior that could impact your case. I think it's essential we meet to go over the details and strategize." My heart raced. I had been so focused on my own feelings that I hadn't considered how Sarah's actions could affect my custody claims. I arranged to meet with my lawyer the next day, feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination. When I arrived at her office, she laid out the facts. "There have been reports from neighbors about loud arguments and disturbances coming from your home. Some have claimed they've witnessed Sarah engaging in questionable behavior while caring for Ben. It's concerning. We may need to gather evidence to present a case for sole custody." I felt my heart drop. This is serious, isn't it? "Yes, and we need to act fast. I recommend documenting everything and speaking to witnesses if possible. You may need to consider making a formal complaint if her behavior continues to pose a risk to Ben." I nodded, my mind racing with possibilities. I hated the idea of turning this into a battleground, but I knew I had to protect my son. What if she finds out? How do I approach this? Delicately, my lawyer sighed. "That's a valid concern, but your son's safety is paramount. If Sarah's behavior becomes a risk, we may not have any other choice but to take action. Focus on gathering your evidence and we'll figure out the next steps." As I left the office, a sense of dread washed over me. I wanted to believe Sarah would get better, that she would take my words to heart, but the reality was harsh. I had to prepare for the possibility that I might have to fight her for custody. That night, as I tucked Ben into bed, I felt a pang of sadness. "Dad, are you okay?" he asked, noticing my distant demeanor. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Just a lot on my mind," I replied, trying to put on a brave face. "Will Mom and you be okay?" he said, his innocent eyes searching mine. I hesitated, my heart aching for him. "We're working on it, but it's going to take time. Just know that I love you no matter what." He nodded, curling up under the blankets. "I love you too, Dad." As I stepped out of his room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I couldn't let my fears control me. I had to stay strong for him, no matter how difficult it became. The following days were spent gathering evidence and watching Sarah closely. I documented every argument, every questionable interaction, and I began to reach out to our neighbors, discreetly asking if they had noticed anything unusual. It was a tense time, but I felt empowered to take the necessary steps to protect my son. I was ready to fight for him, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that he grew up in a safe and loving environment, even if it meant facing the painful truth of my crumbling marriage head-on. Little did I know, the battle ahead would be more complex than I could ever have imagined, and it would test my strength and resolve in ways I never thought possible. The weeks turned into a blur as I continued to document everything related to Sarah's behavior. I felt like I was living a double life, one as a devoted father and another as a man preparing for a potential legal battle. I had conversations with our neighbors, some of whom were willing to share their observations of Sarah's behavior. A couple mentioned they'd heard shouting and saw her having loud late-night visitors. It was unsettling information that only fueled my resolve to protect Ben. I also made a point to connect with Ben more, engaging him in conversations about his feelings. I wanted to understand how he felt about everything without putting too much pressure on him. One afternoon, while we were playing video games, I casually asked, "How do you feel about spending time with Mom?" He paused the game and took a moment, his brow furrowed. "I don't know. Sometimes she's really fun, but other times she gets mad. I don't like it when she yells." My heart sank at his words. "I understand, buddy. Just remember that I'm here for you, okay? You can talk to me about anything." He nodded, his eyes sincere, but I could see the confusion lingering in his mind. I hated that he had to even think about these things. I wanted him to be a carefree kid, not someone worrying about his parents' issues. As my conversations with my lawyer continued, I began to prepare for the worst. She advised me to be ready for anything, including the possibility of Sarah retaliating against my documentation efforts. I was increasingly concerned about how she might react if she found out I was gathering evidence against her. I tried to maintain harmony at home, but the tension was palpable. Then one evening, Sarah caught me off guard. I came home late from work, and she was waiting for me in the living room, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "Jake, can we talk? I feel like we're not getting anywhere and I want to clear the air." My instincts kicked in and I felt a wave of caution wash over me. "What do you want to clear up?" She took a deep breath. "I know you've been documenting things and I want to understand why. I want to know what you're thinking." I was startled by her directness. "I'm just trying to make sure Ben's safe, Sarah. You've been unpredictable and I need to protect him." She bristled, but I could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. "I'm trying. You can't just ignore me or act like this is all my fault. I made a mistake, yes, but I'm working on it." "Working on what?" "Right now, it seems like you're more focused on defending yourself than actually taking responsibility. It's not that simple. Why can't you just give me a chance to show you I'm changing? I'm trying to show up for Ben, for you." I felt a mixture of frustration and sadness. "It's not just about you trying. It's about trust and stability for Ben. I need to know that you're in a place where you can be a good mother and not just a mom who brings chaos into his life." Her expression darkened, and for a moment I could see the anger blooming beneath her desperation. "So, you're just going to cut me out completely? Is that your plan?" "I'm not cutting you out, but I have to be realistic. Can you honestly say that you're the same person I married? Because I don't see that woman anymore." The air between us thickened with unresolved emotions. She looked away and I could tell she was struggling with her feelings. "Jake, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose my family," she said, her voice trembling. I hated that it felt like I was being put in the position to comfort her. "I don't want to lose my family either, but things have to change. I don't know if you can change, and we can't just pretend everything is fine." As I walked away, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I was tired of having the same arguments, and I felt like I was fighting a battle on multiple fronts. I wanted to believe in Sarah's ability to change, but everything I had seen pointed to the opposite. A few days later, I received a call from my lawyer that sent my heart racing. "Jake, we need to have an urgent conversation. Sarah has retained her own legal counsel and they plan to contest the custody situation." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means she's preparing to fight and she may try to use your documentation against you. We need to get ahead of this. I recommend we set up a formal meeting to discuss a strategy moving forward." The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been anticipating this, but hearing it confirmed shook me. I felt a sense of dread settle deep in my chest. The meeting with my lawyer was tense. She laid out the potential pitfalls and how Sarah might approach the case. "She may argue that you're trying to alienate her from Ben, and that could work against you if you're not careful," she warned. "We need to show that you're acting in Ben's best interest and that you're not just using the situation to punish her." I nodded, feeling the pressure mounting. "What do I need to do?" "Keep documenting everything, but also be proactive in showing that you're a responsible, loving father. Engage in activities with Ben that demonstrate your commitment to him. We need to build a strong case." As I left the meeting, a mix of determination and fear coursed through me. I was ready to fight, but I also knew this battle would take a toll on everyone involved. I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions. I had to stay focused on Ben and what was best for him. That night, I sat down with Ben and suggested we go to the park the next day. "What do you think, buddy? Want to go to the park and fly a kite?" His face lit up with excitement. "Yeah, that sounds awesome, Dad." We spent the evening working on our kite together, and in those moments I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was fighting not just for myself, but for my son. I was determined to create a stable, loving environment for him, no matter what it took. The next day, as we flew that kite, I felt a weight lift. In the midst of the chaos, I realized that I was not alone. Ben was my anchor, and I had to keep fighting for him, no matter how tough it got. I knew the battle ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. I wasn't just fighting for custody. I was fighting for my family and the future I envisioned for my son. The days turned into a blur of strategizing and preparing for what I knew would be a challenging custody battle. I felt like I was juggling weights, each one representing a different aspect of my life, my responsibilities as a father, my emotional well-being, and the looming legal fight with Sarah. But amidst the chaos, I found solace in spending time with Ben. Each outing we had together, whether it was flying kites at the park or building elaborate Lego structures, reminded me why I was fighting so hard. As the court date approached, I felt a knot of anxiety settle in my stomach. I knew Sarah would put on a show, portraying herself as the devoted mother who was desperate to keep her family together. I had to remain focused. I had to show the court that I was not just a father, but the better choice for Ben's future. My lawyer kept reminding me that this was as much a battle of perception as it was of facts. The night before the court hearing, I found myself unable to sleep. I sat in the living room thinking about everything that had transpired. I remembered the laughter we used to share, the dreams we had of raising Ben together, and how quickly it all unraveled. I picked up my journal and began writing down my thoughts, documenting my hopes and fears. I wanted to ensure that I was ready for tomorrow no matter what happened. The next morning I woke up feeling both nervous and resolute. I dressed in my best suit, trying to project confidence even though my heart was racing. I took a moment to talk to Ben before heading out. "Hey buddy, I'm going to court today, but I need you to remember that I love you no matter what happens." He looked up at me with wide eyes. "Will I still get to see you?" "Of course. No matter what, you'll always be my number one. I love you." I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, and it broke my heart. I wanted to shield him from all of this, but I also wanted him to know that he was the center of my world. When I arrived at the courthouse, I took a deep breath and stepped through the doors. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with tension and uncertainty. I spotted Sarah sitting with her attorney, and she looked far more composed than I felt. I steeled my resolve, knowing I had to stay focused. As we walked into the courtroom, I glanced at the judge, who would be presiding over our case. She looked formidable, and I felt a pang of anxiety. I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions. I had to present my truth. The hearing began, and I listened intently as Sarah's lawyer painted a picture of a loving mother victimized by her husband's refusal to forgive. Sarah testified, her voice shaking as she spoke about her regret and the love she had for Ben. I could see how she tried to manipulate the emotional narrative, but I stayed calm, preparing for my turn to speak. When my lawyer called me to the stand, I took a deep breath and began my testimony. I spoke from the heart about my experiences as a father, the love I had for Ben, and the concerns I had regarding Sarah's behavior after the affair. I didn't want to demonize her, but I knew I had to be honest about the impact her actions had on our family. As I spoke, I could feel the weight of the room shift. I shared specific instances of how Sarah's unpredictability affected Ben. I talked about the loud arguments, the way she would sometimes disappear for hours, and how I worried about the environment Ben was being raised in. I made it clear that my priority was ensuring a stable, loving environment for our son. In that moment, I felt empowered. I was no longer just a hurt husband. I was a father fighting for his child's future. I could see the judge listening intently, taking notes and assessing the situation. After my testimony, Sarah's lawyer tried to poke holes in my story, but I remained resolute, focused on the facts. I could feel the tension in the room, and I knew this was just as much about how we both presented ourselves as it was about the evidence. When the hearing concluded, I felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. I had shared my truth, but I knew that the judge would take time to deliberate. The waiting period felt like an eternity. I spent the next few days focusing on Ben, trying to distract him from the upcoming decision. Finally, the day came when we would get the verdict. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding in my chest as the judge entered. I held Ben's hand tightly, trying to project calmness even as dread filled me. The judge addressed the court and began reading her decision. I barely heard the first few words, my mind racing with possibilities. Then she spoke clearly, outlining her findings regarding our case. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I am awarding sole custody to the father, Jake. A rush of relief washed over me, and I felt a wave of emotions crash down. I looked at Ben, who was gazing up at me, confusion and hope dancing in his eyes. I pulled him close, hugging him tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude that I was able to protect him from the fallout of our broken marriage. As Sarah's lawyer tried to argue for visitation rights, the judge cut him off, making it clear that the focus was on Ben's well-being. I felt a sense of finality wash over me. I had fought hard for this outcome, and it was a victory not just for me, but for my son. In the days that followed, I took time to reflect on everything that had happened. I felt a mix of sadness for what had been lost and hope for the future. I was determined to create a nurturing environment for Ben, where he could thrive. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges as we adjusted to our new normal, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had learned so much through this experience about love, trust, and resilience. As I looked at Ben playing in the backyard, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was his father, and I would always fight for him. No matter what came next, I was committed to being the best parent I could be, to provide him with the love and stability he deserved. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, knowing that I had the strength to carve out a better future for both Ben and myself.